Watches are great accessories, but it's even better when they're intelligent enough to play music, utilize apps, and even constantly monitor your heart rate. You must have gotten by now that I'm talking about smartwatches. In today's video, the ones we're going to take a look at are the Apple Watch Series 8, the Galaxy Watch 5 Pro, the Google Pixel Watch, the Huawei Watch 3 Pro, and the Garmin Venu 2 Plus. If this comparison was something that you were searching for, like and subscribe to keep in touch with our newest content. Let the facts speak. Let's dive straight into our first watch and give you a quick run through. The first one we tried on was the Apple Watch Series 8. It's really comfortable and also pretty easy to put on, which I noticed isn't the same on a couple of the other ones. It has a signature display design of Apple Watches, and even though I originally thought this shape wouldn't be my cup of tea, I actually think that it looks nice. Small detail is that the screen is 20% larger than the Apple Watch Series 6. It's also optimized for always-on display, which, in my experience, is valuable. You have the crown in the upper left corner and the menu button right below that, which gives it a neat and minimalistic look. The screen is almost bezel-less, which is a positive, and I like the aluminum and ceramic case because glass usually leaves a ton of fingerprints. Last but not least, the sensors are obviously at the back of the watch, and they kind of have a futuristic look. About its performance and usability, I personally wasn't surprised that it works pretty much flawlessly, since my friends and I also had no issues with Apple's previous smartwatches. The crown is very responsive, and we experienced no lagging or freezing in our daily use. In comparison to the older models, the Series 8 now includes a new wrist temperature sensor that's designed to work with cycle tracking to let women know when they're ovulating, plus a brand new crash detection feature which allows the watch to contact emergency services if you're in a crash. We also found the GPS to be very accurate, and there's also a redesigned compass app that's also on the Apple Watch Ultra, so it does kind of lean towards not only being a casual watch, but also a watch that you can use for basic outdoor activities. If you're a hardcore sports person though, I would say that the Ultra version is more for you. There's also a low power mode thanks to watchOS 9, which has been asked of Apple for quite a while now, and this can extend the battery life all the way up to 36 hours. With normal use, it's set to last half that time at around 18 hours. Charging is pretty much the same, as it can charge from 0 to 100% in about an hour. A cool detail is that if you also have the new AirPods Pro 2, you can use the charger of this watch also for that. So, about buying it, the price starts at $399, and we personally think it's a good upgrade if you have one of the older models like the Series 3, 4, or 5, and maybe even the 6, but not really the 7. Overall, it's a solid watch with a good start to the video. Next on the list is the Galaxy Watch 5 Pro. So, this was actually really annoying to put on at the beginning, but after you manage to assemble it by pushing the band through the accurate hole and adjusting the length based on your wrist, it becomes fairly easy to put on and take off, thanks to the magnet attached to the end of the titanium lock that snaps shut. I think the watch is nice, but it also feels quite bulky, similar to the Pro version of mobile phones. The titanium chassis no doubt contributes to this, and it's pretty thick, which may cause some discomfort, especially when trying to sleep with it for sleep tracking, but it does ensure the screen is better protected because of the elevated case. So, compared to the Samsung Galaxy Watch 5, it's definitely a more durable watch with a longer battery life. The rotating bezel present on the Galaxy Watch 4 Classic isn't there though, and I've stumbled across some comments from users that were a little disappointed by this. It does have a skin temperature sensor though alongside the regular sensors on the back, but funnily enough, this was still pending approval at the time of the release. So, performance. I don't know how much you personally will nitpick things, but there were very tiny stutters from time to time while browsing through the watch, and I pay attention to this stuff a lot. It was fluid and responsive most of the time though, and I like the big screen, which makes things easier. The watch does accurately do what it's supposed to do, as in tracking the distance you run as well as your heart rate. There's also a cool track back feature that helps you get back to where you first started, and I could see that being helpful for someone like me who's really bad at directions. So, the Galaxy Watch 5 Pro has Samsung's bioactive sensor, which consists of heart rate, body composition, and SpO2. It runs on Wear OS just like the Galaxy Watch 5, but of course with some in-house Samsung apps. Wear OS is pretty handy because you're able to use Google services, and I like how this kind of brings Android smartwatches together to form a more polished system. To be able to use these services like Gmail and Maps consistently though, you will need a lasting battery. Safe to say, this watch has you covered with 80 hours of battery life, which is double the previous version. Does it pan out though? Not always. You need to use it moderately to get it to last that long, like for example not having the always-on display enabled and not using GPS when you don't need it. So if I were to compare it to, say, a newer generation Garmin watch, which is quite similar in usage to this one due to the focus on outdoor sports, then there would be no match. Still though, it's pretty good battery life and you can charge it fully in about 1 hour and 30 minutes. If you want to buy it, it's currently $399 and I would definitely recommend it if you have a Samsung phone, but it kind of depends on if you don't. Third on the list is the Google Pixel Watch. Now, the experience I had with this watch was kind of a love and hate relationship. I mentioned I like big screens, so this definitely isn't it, and what actually makes it worse for me is this thick bezel which makes the usable part of the display even smaller. I feel they could have definitely done something with that space instead of just leaving it unusable, like a physical or maybe even a digital rotating bezel to control the watch. Even then, I think the watch looks cool on your arm because it's really minimalistic and sharp, but it's not the easiest watch to put on, even with almost the same design as the Apple Watch Series 8. You have a crown on the right side which is extremely responsive and fluid, and that's a really good sign because this is where first-gen devices usually go wrong. Above the crown, you have a small button that opens up recent apps that you used, which is a nice feature because there are only a few apps in smartwatches that you use every single day. The sensor on the back also follows up on the minimalistic look of the Pixel Watch, but an issue I have with it is that you can't turn the heart rate sensor off. So basically, it's constantly 24/7 measuring your heart rate, but don't get me wrong, it's not a terrible thing. Some people actually want this, but the problem is that you're not able to conserve the battery, which I'm gonna get into soon after I talk about its performance. I actually have only positive things to say about this performance, and in fact, you can go check this out yourself, but a lot of reviewers are really praising this heart rate monitor, saying that it's actually the most accurate one out there. You can also take electrocardiograms with this watch to check your heart's rhythm and electrical activity. This could be helpful for people with heart issues or also for people with anxiety. If you want to see stuff like a daily readiness score or advanced sleep tracking analysis, then you'll have to get Fitbit Premium, which costs $9.99 a month. If you don't get the connection, Google bought Fitbit last year. They do give you a 6-month trial when you buy the Pixel Watch, but nevertheless, this decision brought a lot of controversy with it. Even though most people won't use these niche features, I don't know if it's the best decision to put them behind a paywall, like, you're new in the scene. You need to give people reasons to prefer you. Not only is the watch not cheap at all, starting at $349, but it's essentially a first-gen watch, meaning there are more consistent choices out there. Not to mention, Google says the battery will last 24 hours. Up to 24 hours. If you don't work out that day, then yeah, but if you do, I'd say around 16 to 18 hours. You only need an hour of charging to get it topped up though, and in the end, this watch is pretty sweet when you take into consideration that it's a first gen. If you have a Pixel phone, it will be a nice match. But if you don't, then I'd say you're better off going for something more consistent. Huawei Watch 3 Pro. Design-wise, this is a pretty different watch than the others. It has a fully titanium body, which makes it look not really like a smartwatch with plastic bands, but an old-school steel watch. It's interestingly not that heavy, even though it kind of looks like it. The crown on the top right side is also made of titanium and feels pretty slick to the touch. Using the crown also feels nice, and the watch is pretty responsive to the touch, and the interface is clean with smooth animations. Just like many of the others, there's a button next to the crown which takes you to the menu of apps. It's easy to put on the watch, not a surprise since it works like a classic one, but the downside of that is having to adjust the watch to fit your wrist by taking out a couple of pieces. I don't want to exaggerate it though, you'll only have to do that once and never again. So, a big upgrade to the Huawei Watch 3 Pro is that it's finally running Harmony OS 2.0. It's good to see that they've improved Harmony OS to a degree that now they have their own functioning ecosystem. Sure, ditching Wear OS did make them lose access to quite a few apps, but it did increase their battery life by a lot. The watch also supports Celia, which is basically Huawei's voice assistant. There are a lot of preloaded apps. Some are obviously really useful, like heart rate monitoring, sleep tracking, stress measuring, breathing exercises, etc., but that is to be expected from a smartwatch. A nice upgrade compared to the previous versions is that the Huawei Watch 3 Pro supports Wi-Fi when they were only able to be used with Bluetooth and GPS in the past. With premium smartwatches improving, Huawei didn't allow itself to be left behind and also surpassed other brands in some regards because the Huawei Watch 3 Pro charges wirelessly with any key charger, and you won't need the classic charging devices that you do with Apple, Samsung, or Google smartwatches. You can rest it on a MagSafe charger if you want, and it also works with that as well, making it a nice pair to go along with Apple phones. Just in case though, they've also added a battery saver option which allows the phone to go on for around a month, but active use will see it last around 2 or 3 days. So the normal version costs around $329, but this is a titanium version and the price just differs from site to site, but the overall price should be somewhere around $449, though if you look around, you should be able to find a better deal. I think it's a nice watch. Huawei has done a lot to pick itself back up and the customization options are pretty sweet. For those of you who like the old school look rather than the sporty one and have issues with the shorter battery life of some of the most established smartwatch brands, then this could also be a good fit for you, but you also need to keep in mind that it's not a fully iOS or Wear OS compatible watch. Lastly, the Garmin Venu 2 Plus. So we wanted to include Garmin among these 4 smartphone brands because we've heard a lot of praise for them for being one of the, if not the most consistent smartwatch brand. It actually looks really sporty, but at the same time, not so premium. I'm not hating because I know that Garmin buyers typically are the mountain biking, rock climbing crew, and you need the watch to be rather durable. I just like fancy stuff, and even then, while this doesn't necessarily look fancy to me, it does get the job done. The strap and the clasp remind me of older generation watches, but I personally like it even though it's not as easy to put on as some of the other ones. You don't have a crown here, but you have not 1, not 2, but 3 buttons. This design is just Garmin all around, and it's way different from smartwatches that come in pairs with phones. The buttons open assigned apps or shortcuts that you can optimize, while the lower one is the back button. The charging is via a cable that you attach below the sensors at the back, and it's not the most practical way in my opinion, but it's whatever. The display is an ambient light sensor that automatically adjusts the brightness based on the environment, but more importantly, you can see the display even under direct sunlight, further solidifying the fact that Garmin does tend to focus on these outdoor benefits. Always on display is also possible, but you must have learned by now that I don't really prefer it because it basically eats up the battery. However, Garmin watches are known to have some of the best battery life, so depending on your preference, you can decide to keep it on. Speaking about the display, it's okay, but not really fluid and fancy looking when you're playing around with it. The price is around $449, which puts it over the majority of smartwatches, so I honestly would have liked to see some better optimized software. When we move on to apps and features though, that's where it gets really interesting. There's something called Garmin Coach, which allows you to send an adaptive training plan to a compatible Garmin watch. You have different plans for beginners to experts, and this is a really cool bonus that you get by hopping on the Garmin train. Naturally, being a separate brand for mobile phones, the question is there, but they answer it pretty well. There is Android and iOS phone call support, and it's one of the rare smartwatches that works really well with both operating systems. The last and best part to me is the battery. Even with GPS constantly on, you can get 6 to 10 hours of use. If you use the watch sparingly, you'll get up to 2 weeks. In general, I think Garmin is one of the best at what they do, but at the same time, they have their own niche audience. It'll either be your only pick or you won't even consider it. A lot of research was done and a lot of testing took place. Frankly, we could have gone on even more about every individual watch, but we wanted this to be a general and clear comparison of the basics and most important aspects of smartwatches. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons, guys, and take care until the next video.